in the area, all around the boundaries, and an orchard-style planting, excuse me, sorry, in this location here. These are the proposed elevations. As I said, it's a single-storey proposal. The applicant has clearly worked quite hard prior to submitting the application to come up with a design which is reduced in its scale and sits into the site. This is the northwest view of the proposed dwelling. Next is the northeast view, the southwest view, and finally the southeast view at the bottom. These are the floor plans. The proposal indicates a double garage on the end with 3 bedrooms plus a study, a master with ensuite, cloakroom, and an open plan living space with a snug type facility here. These are sections through the site, so helpful to see the context. This is the White House. That's the last house on Green Lane on the same side. Green Lane is here. This is the site. So as you can see, the applicant's intended has attempted to push it down into the site. Relatively flat, although slightly sloping to the left from here. This section looks at it from the north, so as if you were on the other side of the field. You can see the planting along the hedgerow on Green Lane. The White House is here, and these are the stable buildings that I referred to earlier. And finally, the view, which is from Green Lane. Clearly, there will be a hedgerow section through the site, so in front of us, there would be a hedgerow blocking some of this view. This is a long distance view of the site, and the arrow is where the site is, just here. Again, this is the White House. This is an image which I took from the applicant's design and access statement, indicating what it would look like once the trees had grown up on the site. So I'll just come back to these key issues in a little while, but I just wanted to go through some of the issues with you here, if that's possible. The issue, this site has been under scrutiny, or if you like, or consideration for a number of years, as has the site on the opposite side of Green Lane, and as to whether or not it's sustainable or not. The sustainability of the site from an inspector perspective has been different. There's been one inspector that suggested it is a sustainable location, and others which have suggested it's not a sustainable location. So it was a challenging application, I would say, to deal with on the basis that you had 2 very differing views from inspectors. There was a pre-app carried out, and that was came down. It was a marginal conclusion, but it was based on the idea that if it were to be accepted as a sustainable location, then we would want to include a local connection condition, which would then, which in other circumstances has made this sort of development acceptable. However, there was an appeal at Hayes Barton in Stoke Gabriel maybe 2 years ago, which led to a change in the council's use of local connection conditions, and therefore now we wouldn't want to impose a local connection condition on this type of application. So with regard to the different appeal inspectors' views, obviously they're a material consideration in our determination of the application. The applicant also mentioned another appeal which took place in the local area, where the inspector, the council refused the application, but the inspector improved it and suggested that this scheme in front of us, or this location, was similar. However, it's my view that it was a very different location. It was at the end of a cul-de-sac, So it was within the built-up area of the village where it was located. In terms of my consideration, I've considered it against the spatial strategy of the Joint Local Plan, which is SPT1 and SPT2, and then TTV1. Those policies indicate that we are promoting sustainable development. TTV1 indicates the hierarchy for where growth should be allowed, and indicates that the most growth should be in the main towns, and the areas which are at the bottom of the hierarchy are small hamlets and the countryside. And it is my consideration that this is in the countryside. Whilst I acknowledge that there are houses to the east along Green Lane, I would not consider them to be a settlement as such. They are just a group of houses. There's no facilities. There's nothing else other than housing. So as a result of that, my conclusion in terms of this application was to then refer to policy TTV 26 about development in the countryside. And as you'll see from my report, I've concluded that the proposal does not meet that, because there's no rural countryside agricultural justification for it to be there. The application is for a private dwelling. And not affordable. So there is no exception, if you like, to that policy. The other issue which I've identified is the impact of the development on the landscape. As I said previously, the applicant worked very hard on the design of the dwelling to ensure that it met the area of outstanding natural beauty units considerations, and as a result, they have not objected to this development. However, I felt it was important that we looked at it just in terms of the landscape value, irrespective of the AONB scenario. And my view is that whilst the applicant has indicated lots of tree planting, this will take many years to become relevant, if you like, in terms of the site, and as a result, the site will be quite considerably changed as a result of the development, until such time as the screening does become visible and beneficial. So therefore I feel that the landscape will be harmfully impacted by the development. The other issues which I've also raised in my report is the issue of local housing need. There's an oversupply in this parish of 4-bedroom dwellings, and that, as a result, 4-bedroom dwellings. And whilst this is identified in the planning application form as a 3-bedroom dwelling, it is of a size and that could accommodate a 4th bedroom. And there is a study which, again, could be converted to a 4-bedroom. And therefore, as a result, I don't believe it does comply with policy Dev 8 in the Joint Local Plan. In addition, the design and access statement indicated some fabric first carbon reduction measures, and refers to the fact that they could use an air source heat pump, but it doesn't indicate that they will. And there are no other external carbon reduction measures proposed. And in view of the climate emergency, my view was that it wasn't sufficient to meet the policy of Dev 32. Finally, the site lies within the Tamar Estuaries SAC zone of influence, where we would normally require a financial mitigation towards the recreational impact of the development on the Tamar Estuaries SAC, and no such undertaking has been provided, and that forms the 5th reason for refusal. So my recommendation is for refusal, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members, any questions? Councillor Spettigue, and then Councillor Stafford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I ask, in terms of, you've just mentioned carbon reduction, would the significant tree planting and the nature of the roof of the building not be included in that?
That would increase the biodiversity on the site, I would agree, and that's been referred to in the report. But in terms of carbon reduction measures, they're much more about providing measures which reduces the carbon footprint of the building. So, for example, many people use photovoltaics as an option, and indeed, if there had been commitment to the use of the air source heat pump, then that would also be of benefit.
Understood. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Yes, I was just wondering how far this was from the local facilities as being sustainable.
So in my report, I discussed the distance from villages in the area where there were some various facilities. It's 1.6 kilometres from Yelverton, which is the closest settlement, 2.4 kilometres from Crapstone and 4.2 from Buckland, Monacorum.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Moment. No, can't see any. Difficult to see hands sometimes the way we laid out at the moment. Okay, so if you think of any, we will take them later on. So we will now move to our registered speakers. So first up, we have Mr. Andrew Pett, who is an objector. If you'd like to come forward and take the stand. I think you were here for the earlier application, so you've probably seen how it all works. If you'd like to turn the microphone on when you're ready, you will have 3 minutes. If you look like you're going to run over, then Saul will give you just a 30-second warning, just to let you know, and I will need to stop you when you get to the end of your 3 minutes, okay? If members have any questions, then they will be able to ask you for clarity. So when you're ready, in your time, off you go. Thank you.
Hello, I live at Merrilyn, which is on the opposite side of Green Lane to the site in question. There have been 24 letters objecting to this application. The planning officer has provided a full explanation as to why it should be refused, because it is unsustainable, in breach of the council's policies and harmful to the landscape. I'd like to make a few additional points. In order to create a larger entrance onto Green Lane, it would involve destroying an existing Devon bank. The field in question is in the Tamar Valley AONB, which, as you know, has the highest status of protection. The field in question has been the subject of 2 appeals to the Planning Inspectorate. In 1996, the inspector refused an application to site a small mobile home there, stating that it would add to the built development in the area, further damaging the rural character and fine landscape. Even a small mobile home relating to the existing stables would represent an unwarranted development. In 2016, the inspector refused an application in the same field, concluding that the development would fail to conserve the landscape and scenic beauty of the Tamar Valley AONB. In 2018, in relation to an application in the field immediately opposite, which equally included extensive mitigating landscaping plans and was supported by the AONB, the planning inspector refused the application, stating, "In my view, while landscape screening may mitigate the effects of the development in landscape visual terms, particularly when trees are in leaf, it would not mitigate the fundamental and permanent change in the character of the site that would result from the introduction of permanent residential use." On all 3 occasions, the planning inspectorate refused the developments as they would cause unacceptable harm to the AONB. Therefore, the inspectorate provided clear guidance that development at these fields, even with extensive landscaping plans, would be harmful to the landscape of the AONB, and that harm outweighs any potential benefits. Planning policies may change over the years, but the importance of the AONB designation and the clear guidance provided by the inspectorate remains constant. There are other landowners in Green Lane with fields that they want to develop. This application has a wider impact on the entire AONB. If you grant this application, how can the council refuse similar applications anywhere in the AONB? All the fields within the AONB will be up for grabs if an applicant simply suggests digging a hole and planting some trees to counteract the environmental impact. This is this applicant's second attempt to obtain permission of this site. He withdrew his 2018 application on the eve of this committee's meeting.
30 seconds.
The applicant's repeated attempts to obtain planning permission for this field are a drain on council resources, and therefore the council should seek an order for costs against the applicant if he pursues an appeal to the planning inspector. We urge you to refuse this application, which contravenes your policies, involves destroying an existing Devon bank and endangers the AONB. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Well judged in your timings. Any members, do you have any questions for Mr. Beck? No, doesn't look like it. So thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. I should then like to invite Mr. Mark Evans, who is the agent who is going to be speaking for the application. I hope you didn't get stuck in the traffic as well on the way up. Okay, so again, you've heard what I've just said and you have 3 minutes. So when you're ready, off you go. Thank you.
Members, I'll start and also conclude by requesting that you give significant weight to the fact that just 2 weeks ago, West Devon Borough councillors agreed a motion to formally declare a housing crisis based on the fact that the authority is failing to deliver enough housing to meet the identified local need. West Devon Borough Council lead member for housing has formally stated that you, as a council, recognise the urgency of the current housing crisis and need to find new creative ways to deliver good quality housing to meet the locally identified need, particularly avoiding 4 and 5 bed properties. This application provides you with the opportunity to support a proposal which will achieve exactly the high quality housing you should be encouraging on a windfall site. A proposal which has very positively responded to the extensive pre-application advice received in order to achieve the delivery of a high quality 3-bedroom property that is in an existing settlement and that will help address the housing's need in the locality. In terms of the detail of the proposal, the development has very closely followed the pre-app advice received to deliver a very sensitively sited, single-storey, green-roofed family home designed with low-carbon, high-energy efficiency at its heart, including the use of an air source heat pump and rainwater harvesting, and which is set well down into the sloping site topography. I'm pleased that this, together with the inclusion of a very extensive new native tree and hedge planting scheme, has a point of fact been agreed by both your planning officer and AONB officer to achieve a development that will both preserve and enhance the appearance and character of the AONB in which it is situated, as supported by Dev 25. It is very clear that this site, which is set roughly between 2 existing properties, adjoining a contiguous run of houses and with the context of a small settlement of at least 45 existing properties, cannot reasonably be considered to be an isolated location. Members, I particularly and must respectfully point out that your planning officer misinterprets the council's housing policy Dev 8 when advising you that a 3-bed property with an additional office space cannot be generally considered to be a 3-bed dwelling. The Council's adopted supplementary planning document specifically states at paragraph 4.17, and I quote, with respect to Dev 8, home working is supported, and as such, the provision of one room identified as an office or study will be accepted. The proposal is therefore unequivocally for a 3-bedroom property and should be assessed as such, thus being supported by policy Dev 8. In conclusion, your decision on this application is clearly very finely balanced. In recognising the context of the very recently acknowledged housing crisis, so new that it is not even considered or reported in the planning officer's report before you, I would ask that you balance all the significant planning merits of this high quality proposal and follow the advice of your lead member for housing, and please support this new and creative housing proposal for a 3-bed family home that will go a small but not insignificant way to helping West Devon Borough Council meet your local housing need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Pearce.
Good morning. I'm intrigued at your interpretation of local housing needs. Will this property be going onto the open market if it is approved, or will it be for someone who is living in the area?
I can answer that question. It will be a self-build by my client who will live in the area, and we would be happy to have a principal residency clause put on that as a condition if that was felt to be necessary.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? No, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. You turned that one off. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. I'm now going to invite Councillor Richedel. I believe you are combining your comments as Parish Council and Borough Council. You're speaking at the same time on behalf of both. Is that correct? As ward member, of course, you have 5 minutes. So as and when you are ready, please do make a start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on this application. As you know, I'm the ward member and I also chair the Parish Planning Committee. Yelverton is a complex planning environment as half the village sits within the national park and therefore comes under the Dartmoor National Park planning control, and the other half sits within the Tamar Valley AOMB and comes under West Devon's. That said, the two authorities sit within the same housing market area. The JLP contains a village hierarchy in which Yelverton simply does not feature. It is not a main town, smaller town, key village, or sustainable village, and no indicative housing targets have been ascribed to it by West Devon Borough Council. In contrast, the Dartmoor National Park Authority plan, Yelverton is a local centre, and DNP has a target to bring forward housing in Yelverton. On Friday of this week, Dartmoor National Park Authorities Committee will consider an application for 41 homes to include 19 affordable homes at Bingham Hill, and development of a further 10 small houses and flats on a brownfield site at the Lake of Mutton is currently underway. Both these sites are within easy walking distance of the amenities at Yelverton and considerably closer than this application. The point I'm making is that Yelverton is bringing forward housing to meet the identified housing need and attempting to tilt the imbalance, which has resulted in house prices in the village being amongst the highest in West Devon. What the village does not need is more large, expensive detached houses as far from the village as it's possible to be. During the inspection of the joint local plan, however, there was concern that the plan's inclusion of housing targets for villages within the AOMB were not matched by the plan identifying how it would honour the duty to give the highest level of protection to the AOMB. Recognising this, the final version of the plan removed these indicative targets altogether from villages within the parish within the AOMB. So the Dartmoor National Park Authority housing need is being met by the applications in significantly more susceptible locations. The joint local plan places no obligation on Yelverton, but has sought to protect the AOMB by removing development from it. There is a housing imbalance, which this application does nothing but exacerbate, and the authority has a secure 5-year land supply. So my challenge for the committee is to consider how approval of this application by building on a greenfield site at the very edge of the village will enhance and protect the AOMB and help meet the local housing crisis, which clearly identifies the need for housing which local people can afford. The parish council could not make this application add up, and I suggest you might struggle to as well. My final point is one which you may be tempted to shrug off: precedence. The village is surrounded by fields, many closer to the village than this one, owned by folk who are looking closely at today's outcome. If this application is approved, I fear you may be licensing a land raid on the AOMB. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Cheadle, members? Just the one from me, if I may, and I'm sure there's something about it in the report and I just can't find it. Does the Yelverton have a neighbourhood plan, or is there something in train? Yeah.
No, the Yelverton neighbourhood plan was fairly well advanced, but was suspended and is still in a state of suspension. It's got to regulation 15, but no further. And it's awaiting the outcome of the government white paper on exactly which way planning is going before we spend more effort trying to get it off the ground.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. No other questions, don't think? No, right, thank you then. So that's our speakers. Mr. Wong, I think you wanted to come in a minute.
Yes, in response to something that Mr. Evans, a comment Mr. Evans made around his firm view that the proposal is for a three-bedroom dwelling rather than a 4-bedroom dwelling, and the SPD specifically says facilitating work from home. To be fair, I think that's right, and I think we should. I am proposing that as officers we withdraw the reason number 3 of the reasons for refusal, because I don't think that's sustainable given the point that's been made. obviously it's in the report to be down to members, but officers' view with the third reason for refusal is around 3 4-bedroom dwellings and Dev 8 is not something that we should be pursuing, because I don't think that would be sustainable on appeal, given the point that's been made today.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have any questions on that point a minute? Or does that all make sense to members? Okay. I can read out the reason 3, particularly as people who might be listening and won't have the agenda in front of them. So the third reason was the proposal for a 3 to 4 bedroom dwelling fails to meet the local housing needs and that of the district for smaller dwellings and for those with specific needs as outlined in Policy Dev 8 of the Plymouth and South West Devon Joint Local Plan and Para 78 of the MPPF 2021. And that is the reason that is being suggested by Head of Planning, that one is withdrawn as a material reason for refusal. Okay. Do any members have any further questions for the Planning Officer before I move to the recommendation? Okay, so I shall move the recommendation, which is for refusal, with the reasons 1, 2, 4 and 5 as described on page 16. Is there a second for that, please?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. That's Councillor Pearce. I don't think his microphone's on, so Councillor Pearce seconded that one. Members, we are now in debate. You wish to speak in debate? Councillor Pearce, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As everybody's shy this morning, I will kick this one off. Because of the many applications that we've had for Green Lane over the years and the number of years that unfortunately officers have had to put up with me as a member of the Planning Committee, I know this area quite well, and it's a very rural lane, ancient lane, and I do have real concerns at the way that the proposal nibbles away at the real reality of this lane. Although the applicants have done a lot to try and mitigate the effect of a development, it's still there, and it is extending the urbanisation of a rural lane, and the breaking into an ancient hedgerow. I mean, if you saw a photograph of the lane, and the ancient hedgerows are really quite significant, I feel. So I have to go with the Planning Officer's recommendation, and we heard from the ward member and the chairman of the parish council, and I find it, the interpretation of our housing crisis motion last week, that was primarily to deal with people who can't afford the housing that's being provided at the moment. So, I think that this will not help alleviate the problems that we've got in our borough, and especially in the Yelverton, Bucton, Monacorum area. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was quite impressed with the design of the building, actually, and I think the architect's to be commended that he's managed to make a house disappear in the landscape. But how that, I would question actually whether the dwelling actually enhances an ANOB. I don't understand that. I think the problem is still that it is a dwelling within a countryside area. So that for me would be a no. So I would support the officer's recommendation in this case.
Anybody else? Okay, in that case, we will take this to the vote, and the recommendation is refusal as described. So all in favour of the recommendation, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Lovely. Thank you very much. So, right, so that one is refused. And I would like to thank everybody for your contributions, for those who've spoken up for and for those who've spoken against. They've all been taken into account and are all valid. So thank you very much indeed for that. We will now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is 5960, planning appeals update. Over to you, Mr. Weimer.
Thank you, Chair. There's only one appeal decision to bring to you this month. It's actually quite a pleasing decision. It's not that often we get appeals against refusals to do works to retrieve the pre-preservation ordered trees, not least because we've got a very competent trees officer who tends to negotiate. If works are done, they're done in an appropriate way, and lesser works are often approved that are appropriate. But in this case, you can see that the application was to reduce by 3 metres the crown on 3 trees, oak, holly and hazel, and to lift the crown by 6 or 7 metres on 2 beeches and a chestnut. We had approved the works to T2 and T3, the holly and hazel, but the others were refused. The inspector took the view that the trees make a positive contribution, and the works would be moderately, albeit moderately, would still be harmful to the character and appearance of the area. And none of the factors submitted by the appellant, which was things like shading of garden, but they took the view that it wasn't exactly a small garden, it wasn't all the garden that was being shaded, and dismissed the appeal. As I say, from an officer's point of view, it's a really pleasing decision, because I think it's clearly quite important that we do protect TPO trees. So I'll happily answer any questions, but I think the appeal decision was, if you've read it, was quite straightforward and quite relatively easy to follow.
Councillor Pearce.
Just to make a comment, I echo those views, Mr. Weimer. It's quite unusual, and these trees form a major important impact on this part of Chocolate Lane. I mean, I know this road very well because it goes up to the cricket club where I spent many years, many moons ago. And the number of trees that have been lost there due to the weather, and if this lot was reduced by the amount that was proposed, it would have had quite a significant impact on the visual of the view of Chocolate Lane. So it's good to see. And I was very impressed with the inspector's report, actually, the way he worded it all.
Chairman. Anybody, any questions? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 7, the update on undetermined measure applications. That's 61 to 64 on your agenda. And again, I don't know whether Mr. Wong wants to say anything or just wants to take questions.
I think as usual, I think the report is relatively self-explanatory. I'll happily take any questions there are, with the usual caveat, without discussing the merits of the individual case.
Councillor Moyes and then Councillor Cheek.
The Astra Salvage Yard, I thought we were originally going to have a site visit there. What sort of happened with the change of plan?
We were hoping that we were going to get responses back so that we can actually finalise a report. What it came to is that the responses didn't come back, so we weren't able to finalise the report, and we took the view that it was better to have. Yes, when it comes to committee, yes, there will be a site visit, but we thought the view would be better to have that site visit in the normal timescale for the meeting that it's going to, rather than having it now and it not coming to this meeting. So we haven't dismissed it. It was simply we're expecting some comments back so we could finalise the report, so you had all the information in front of you, and they just haven't got it yet.
And secondly, Plymouth Road, when will we be seeing the Section 106 agreement?
I'll defer to Mr. Fairbairn for that one, if that's okay.
I've just asked for an update from the solicitors acting for us on our behalf. So I'll be letting you know as soon as we receive a draft and it's in an agreed format, and we'll be letting you know what the terms are.
Okay, I've got Councillor Cheadle and Councillor Pearce.
Mr. Fairbairn's just answered the question I was going to ask.
It's nice and easy. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just wondering how many years can go by when one deals with an application like the wool grading centre. Still torn. I mean, I think that has been occupying officers' time for most of my time on West Devon Borough Council.
There are reasons why it is occupying a significant amount of time. I probably haven't got time this morning to go through all of the reasons why. And whilst I would accept that historically some of the delays have been of our making, I would also say we are not entirely at fault. Not fault's the wrong word. There's a lot of issues that still need to be resolved, and they're just not getting resolved. And the ward member is being kept up to speed in terms of what's happening.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Weimer. That is correct. It's been a very, very difficult application. I think we as our officers have dealt with this in a fair and an honest way. There's been lots of different people coming in, giving opinions, but I think at last we've reached the stage where a meeting has been arranged with, there are 2 applicants for this site, and an extension of time has been agreed, as Mr. Weimer says in there, and this I think is encouraging, and we share your views that I think the whole of North Taunton wants to see this building saved and wants to see it progress in a way, but I am pleased and gratified that we are, I believe, proceeding in a productive manner. Thank you.
Heading in the right direction, I think is the word, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Any other further questions? Pointing, is there somebody else with a hand up? Oh, right, okay. Okay, in that case, it looks like not, so